I watched it reboot 9 times before I stopped counting. The primary distress transponder on the Ardent ward was a Kethavar Series 7 unit, 12 years old, rated for vacuum exposure and electromagnetic shock up to 400 kilovolts. The Dominion strike that took out our aft relay array also put 270 kilovolts through the transponder housing. Not enough to destroy it, enough to scramble the carrier frequency register and push the unit into its emergency restart cycle. The first reboot fired on our standard patrol band. No one answered. The band was congested with Dominion jamming, and the burst would not have cleared the nearest relay node in any case, because the relay node was tumbling in 3 pieces behind us. The second reboot fired on the compact emergency reserve band. No answer. That one was reasonable. The compact's reserve band required a security handshake our encryption module could no longer produce, because the encryption module was sitting somewhere in the debris field with the relay node. I remember noting both of these in my incident log with the calm that comes from having too many things to do simultaneously. 2 crew were dead. Commander Thess, Orvath Vale, had a pressure seal on her left arm and was still at the helm, which I respected and did not ask about. Petty Officer Ren Cavis, no relation, was working the secondary drive coupling with one hand because his right shoulder had been dislocated when the aft bulkhead gave, and he had not mentioned it until I asked him directly why he was moving that way. The transponder rebooted a 3rd time, a 4th, a 5th. Each reboot cycled to the next frequency in the unit's factory default table, a list of 84 emergency bands installed at manufacture and never updated, because no one updates factory default tables on a 12-year-old Series 7 unit. They simply run. Most of those 84 bands were dead. Joint survey allocations from compacts dissolved before I was born. Corridor watch frequencies retired from the active registry decades ago. Hazard notification channels that existed once and then did not. The transponder did not know this. It was a Series 7. It cycled through what it had. Reboots 6 and 7 went unanswered. By 8, I had given up watching the confirmation light. I was compiling the crew manifest for the casualty report, which is a thing you do when you believe the casualty report is the document anyone will read next. Petty Officer Cavis had got the secondary drive coupling to 40%, which was not enough for transit, but was enough to hold our orbit above the atmospheric limb, which meant we would not need the casualty report for at least another 6 hours. I noted this and continued the manifest. Reboot 9. Reboot 10. The confirmation light on the transponder housing was amber, which meant broadcast in progress, not confirmed received. I had not seen it go green since before the strike. I assumed I would not see it go green. We had 4 crew left in functional condition, 2 in the medical bay, 1 sealed drive coupling holding us above a planet we had not been assigned to and could not leave under our own power, and a 12-year-old transponder working through a list of frequencies that belonged to a different era of the sector. On the 11th reboot, the confirmation light went green. I stared at it for a moment before I understood what I was seeing. Green meant confirmed received, which meant a relay node or a monitoring station somewhere had caught the burst and sent an acknowledgement handshake. The unit had found a live frequency. I pulled the band identifier off the confirmation log. Orvath Nullate. I did not know Orvath Nullate. That was the first thing I noticed, that I had no record of it in any frequency registry I had been issued. I checked the compact emergency reserve table. Not listed. I checked the Joint Corridor Watch allocation. Not listed. I checked the current survey band registry, which was the last document I had on hand, and it was not there either. I was still doing this when the reply came. It was not a relay node acknowledgement. It was a voice transmission, which was unusual, and it came back in standard compact tradeband encoding, which meant whoever sent it had taken the time to reformat from their native protocol, which implied a native protocol that was different from ours. The voice was calm, a little flat, the way voices are when someone is reading off a checklist rather than speaking to a person. They identified themselves as Terran Joint Emergency Monitoring Station, Deep Grid Array, Orvith Nullate. They confirmed receipt of our distress burst on that band. They said they had our transponder signature logged and a position fix derived from the burst geometry. They said the nearest available Terran asset was the escort corvette Sable Reach, 11 minutes out on corridor transit. They asked for a crew count and a status summary. I gave them both. 6 crew, 2 in the medical bay with serious injuries. Primary drive gone, relay array gone, encryption module gone. I told them the transponder had taken 270 kilovolts of electromagnetic shock and rebooted 11 times to reach their frequency. I added that last part because it seemed like something they should know. The monitoring station said, acknowledged, and read me back our status summary word for word to confirm, and then said the Sable Reach had been notified, and 2 additional assets were being diverted from their current assignments. They said the second vessel was an engineering tender, and the third was a hospital corvette. They said all 3 would arrive within 40 minutes of each other. I thanked them. They said that was not necessary and asked if I needed to stay on the channel or if they could patch me to a relay. I said I would stay on the channel because I was not entirely sure I believed any of it yet, and I wanted to hear their voice for a few more minutes. Commander Vale, when I told her, said nothing for a moment. She was watching the atmospheric limb through the cracked viewport. We had lost the outer portside pane and were looking at daylight through the emergency inner seal, which was rated for 16 hours. She said, eventually, which band? I told her. She said she did not know that band. I said I did not either. She said quietly, that did not seem to matter. The Sable Reach arrived in 13 minutes, 2 minutes behind their estimate and faster than I would have expected from a corridor transit diversion. Their comms officer ran through the same status checklist the monitoring station had used, then asked whether we had any objection to their engineering team beginning an external assessment of our drive housing. I said we did not. The team began the assessment before I had finished saying it. The engineering tender arrived 31 minutes later. The hospital corvette arrived 11 minutes after that. 3 ships for 6 crew. I had not asked for any of them. The transponder had asked for them by accident, and it had asked for them 11 times on frequencies no one was using before it found the one frequency that turned out to be Earth's. The engineering tender's crew spent 4 days on the drive coupling and the relay array. On the 5th day they asked about the transponder. I told them it was a Kethavar Series 7, 12 years old, and that it had rebooted 11 times through its factory default table until it reached Orvith Nullate. The chief engineer, a quiet person who spoke in short sentences and seemed to prefer working to talking, said that was an interesting table. I asked her what she meant. She pulled up the factory default frequency list for the Series 7 and went to entry 11. Orvith Nullate was there, exactly as the unit had cycled to it. She said the Kethavar factory had included it because, at the time the Series 7 entered production, Orvith Nullate was listed as an active joint emergency band under a monitoring accord that the Kethavar Bureau had signed and Earth had signed. She said the accord had lapsed on the Kethavar side 43 years ago. She said Earth's side of the accord had not lapsed. I asked why not. She said, in the same tone she used for everything, that it was still in the monitoring charter and no one had filed to remove it. She asked if I wanted them to rebuild the transponder suite to our original spec or to Terran spec. She said if they rebuilt to Terran spec, they could include Orvith Nullate as the primary emergency band, which would mean any future broadcast from the Ardent Ward on that channel would go directly to Earth's deep grid array without cycling through 10 dead frequencies first. I thought about that for a moment. I said Terran spec. She nodded as if that was the obvious answer and went back to work. I filed my incident report the day before the engineering tender released us to proceed under our own power. The report ran to 14 pages, most of them technical. The summary was 3 sentences. A Dominion strike disabled our standard transponder. The unit cycled through 11 factory default frequencies before receiving a confirmed response. Earth's monitoring station replied on frequency 11 and dispatched 3 vessels. In the notes field, I added one line. The transponder was registered on Eleventh nullate 43 years after the accord lapsed on our side. Earth had been listening for 43 years in case someone needed frequency 11. We needed it on the 11th try. I did not add anything else. There was not anything else to add. The transponder was rebuilt, the band was live, and the Ardent Ward was registered on Earth's monitoring grid now, which meant if the transponder ever fired again, it would not have to work through the list. It would start at entry 11.